Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, in an effort to contain the bird flu outbreak ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday this week, authorities issue another travel ban on poultry and livestock, as well as farmers, this time covering many regions along Korea's west coast. Korea's main rival parties clash over the biggest ever personal data leak, with the ruling party rejecting the opposition's calls for a special parliamentary probe into the incident. The government will form a task force to better manage the crisis. Plus, a protest leader in Thailand is shot and killed as anti-government protests intensify, forcing dozens of early polling stations to shut ahead of a national election on February 2nd. Daybreak begins now.
You're watching Daybreak on Monday, January 27th. I'm Choi Yusun in Seoul. Let's start with the bird flu crisis affecting the southern and central regions of Korea. The government has ordered a second temporary standstill on the movement of livestock and farm workers since the virus broke out more than 10 days ago. Our Kwon Soa reports.
It was a busy weekend for disease prevention authorities as areas with confirmed or suspected bird flu cases are being supervised around the clock. Despite their best efforts, the rising number of confirmed cases prompted the government on Sunday to issue a 12-hour standstill from Monday morning on the movement of any livestock, farm workers, and vehicles in Gyeonggi-do, Chungcheong-do, Daejeon, as well as the administrative city of Sejong. The standstill came into effect at 6 a.m. on Monday and will be lifted at 6 p.m. The government took the step as fears grow the virus could spread throughout the entire nation, especially after the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain was confirmed in more ducks over the weekend, including on a farm in Korea's southern Jeollanam-do Province. Further north in Buyeo, Chungcheong-do Province, the virus has been confirmed in chickens for the first time. This is especially concerning as chickens are more vulnerable to the virus and they greatly outnumber the number of ducks. With that in mind, authorities have decided to cull all ducks and chicken within a 3-kilometer radius of 6 regions along the west coast. Nearly 500,000 birds have been culled so far, with another 1.5 million to be slaughtered over the coming days. The virus has also been found in migratory bird droppings at Hwang Lake in Hwasong, Gyeonggi-do Province. This is the most northern point in which the virus has been detected, increasing worries it could spread to the Seoul metropolitan area. Residents in Seoul have reported 3 suspicious bird deaths over the last few days, but further investigation showed they weren't linked to the bird flu. More cases are predicted to show up this week, especially since the virus has an incubation period of 7 to 21 days. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won has ordered a state of emergency and has called for special attention ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday, which begins on Thursday. Kwon Soa, Arirang News.
As the dust settles on one of the largest ever personal and financial data leaks in Korea's history, the country's main political parties have been rolling out their own measures to investigate the matter and to bring the crisis under control. Koreans flooded banks and call centers last week to cancel credit cards following the unprecedented leak that affected a staggering 20 million people. Kim Young-gil has the latest.
The leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, Kim Hwang-gil, has proposed the National Assembly form a special committee to find out how the data breaches were able to happen. Kim is also demanding government and presidential office officials step down to take responsibility for the leaks.
There should be a full-scale personnel shakeup at the presidential office of Cheongwade and the cabinet, as these leaks were brought on by President Park Geun-hye's uncommunicative politics.
He also urged the ruling Saenuri Party to accept his party's proposal of setting up a special committee to oversee a parliamentary probe into the matter. Kim said the government must determine the causes of the leaks and come up with preventive measures. However, the Saenuri Party says it's opposed to Kim's proposal, as the matter can be handled by one of the National Assembly's standing committees.
A separate parliamentary probe by a special committee is unnecessary. Our top priority is to bring the situation under control. President Park has promised to hold the people accountable.
At an emergency meeting with related ministers on Sunday, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won ordered the establishment of a government-wide task force and to devise follow-up measures to bring the crisis under control. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The South Korean government plans to respond later today to North Korea's proposal on Friday to resume reunions of families separated since the Korean War. While Seoul is expected to welcome Pyongyang's acceptance of its calls to hold the family meetings, the South Korean government will suggest immediate talks on the details of the event, likely to take place in mid-February. Seoul wants to schedule the family gatherings before its annual military drills with Washington begin in late February. In fact, South Korea will inform the North and its other neighbors about the upcoming Key Resolve and Fall Eagle exercises next week as regular drills that are defensive in nature. In its recent peace offensive, Pyongyang, which considers the drills a provocation, urged Seoul to cancel them. Now to some truly chilling news if it turns out to be true. Multiple sources claim the direct relatives of recently executed Changsong Tech have all been executed on the orders of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Citing the sources, Seoul-based Jeollanam News reports entire families directly related to Chang, who was executed in December for plotting to overthrow the regime, were put to death with their children and grandchildren. The sources say those killed include Chang's sister Chang Ge-sun, her husband and ambassador to Cuba, Chun Young-jin, as well as Chang's nephew Chang Yong-chol, ambassador to Malaysia. The details have not been confirmed by the North or South Korean governments, but analysts say recent events in the North suggest the sources' claims could be true. One of the few remaining Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery has passed away at the age of 90. Hwang Geum JA, who was seized at the age of 13 and later forced to serve in Japanese military brothels during the colonial era, died of old age early Sunday. With Hwang's passing, only 55 out of nearly 240 registered Korean victims are still alive. While it's race against time for the elderly victims waiting for a sincere apology from Tokyo for its past atrocities, the new head of Japan's national broadcaster NHK, Kasuto Moimi, says military sex slaves existed in all countries that engaged in war. Momi then reiterated Tokyo's position, saying compensation for the former sex slaves was settled in a bilateral pact in 1965.
Later in the
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a.
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. A Thai anti-government protest leader has been shot dead in Bangkok as violence erupted once again on Sunday in demonstrations aimed at blocking early voting ahead of next week's disputed general elections. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Thousands of Thais were unable to cast their ballots on Sunday as anti-government demonstrators surrounded polling stations in Bangkok and southern parts of the country, obstructing early voting ahead of next week's general elections. An anti-government protest leader was killed as clashes erupted between protesters and government supporters. Police say Sutin Tartin, leader for the People's Democratic Reform Committee, was speaking on top of a truck when he was shot dead by an unidentified assailant. This brings the death toll to 10 with scores wounded since anti-government protests flared up in November. Protesters want Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra to resign, accusing her of being a puppet for her brother and exiled former leader Thaksin Shinawatra. They want an unelected People Council that would oversee political reform. Last week, Thailand declared a state of emergency, raising doubts whether general elections could be held according to schedule. A Thai court ruled last Friday that the general vote scheduled for February 2nd could be postponed out of fear of violence and disruptions. This latest violence came despite pledges from protest leaders not to obstruct the advanced elections. Early voting has been cancelled in at least 45 out of 50 polling stations in Bangkok, while voting was also disrupted at several venues in southern provinces. Some 49 million Thais are eligible to cast their votes, with over 2 million having registered for advance voting. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The Syrian government and the opposition Syrian National Coalition have struck a small agreement in their first face-to-face international peace talks in Geneva that, as of now, have struggled to make much progress. Under the deal, women and children will be allowed to leave the besieged Syrian city of Homs. Homs has been coming under heavy mortar attacks for more than 1 year. The two sides failed to meet common ground on sending humanitarian aid into Homs on Saturday, but UN envoy Lakhdar Brahimi, who is acting as mediator between the two sides, has admitted progress was always going to be slow. Brahimi says face-to-face talks aimed at exploring a political solution to the crisis will start on this Monday. Egypt will have a new president before it has a new parliament, after the country's interim government announced that the poll to find the next leader will come before parliamentary elections. Interim President Adli Mansour says he will ask the Election Commission to begin presidential candidate registration under the recently adopted constitution, which calls for elections to be held within 90 days of its passage. Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is expected to run for president after he led the military coup overthrowing former Islamist President Mohamed Morsi in July of last year. The announcement follows the third anniversary of the revolution that led to the ousting of former dictator Hosni Mubarak. Reports say around 50 people were killed in clashes between police and anti-government protesters on Saturday. And back here in the nation, Korean medical researchers recently developed the country's first treatment in the first field of radioimmunotherapy. The technology is said to be 3 times more effective in fighting cancer than conventional methods and could significantly reduce treatment costs for cancer patients here in Korea. Our Paul Lee has the details.
This patient at a hospital in Korea has been diagnosed with malignant lymphoma, a cancer of the blood that has spread to various organs. Rather than using common radiation and chemotherapy, doctors have chosen a newly developed medical treatment, the first of its kind in the country. The cutting-edge medical technology is called radioimmunotherapy. It uses the body's own immune system to hunt down and kill cancerous tissue. The cancer-fighting drug is mainly composed of 2 parts, a modified antibody protein and a radioactive nucleotide or isotope. It's specifically designed to seek out corresponding antigens that lie on the surface of cancerous cells, based on a lock and key mechanism. After attaching themselves, the special antibodies release a lethal dose of radiation, destroying the tumor and leaving nearby healthy tissue unaffected. According to the Korea Institute of Radiological and Medical Sciences, the new radioimmunotherapy was 3 times more effective than conventional treatments in a clinical trial of 50 patients. These results for one female patient in her 60s show a 30% decline in cancer cells around the neck just 1 month after treatment. A checkup 6 years later now shows that the lymphoma is in complete remission.
Since radioimmunotherapy is effective in killing cancer cells, it can be of great help in treating sensitive tumors. It's become the best model for lymphoma. Just receiving the first treatment alone leads to 29% treatment response.
In addition to saving more lives, there are financial benefits to the breakthrough in medical technology. Previously, radioimmunotherapy materials had to be imported, but with the localization of supply, the cost of treatment is likely to drop by 1/10, potentially saving local patients tens of thousands of dollars. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
With the Lunar New Year holiday fast approaching, the Korean government is taking steps to ensure a happy and safe national holiday for all. Among the measures already being put into action include stabilizing food prices and ensuring reliable access to emergency services. Our Song Ji-sun has more.
The Korean government finalized a series of livelihood stabilization measures ahead of one of the nation's biggest holidays. Officials will be monitoring the daily prices of varied consumer goods. 28 items are on this year's checklist, including apples, pears, rice, cabbage, and other seasonal products. The government will also be keeping an eye on gasoline and marine products to ensure prices don't rise above 1.6 times their normal levels. In another effort to make this Lunar New Year an affordable one, more than 2,000 marketplaces across the country will be open to the public, offering regional goods at discounted prices. An internet and smartphone app will be available to give customers information about these local market events and relative prices. And to ensure small and mid-sized firms can keep pace with the spike in consumer spending, financial institutions such as the Industrial Bank of Korea and the Korean Development Bank will release about $15.8 billion of funds into the market. Smaller firms will also benefit from extended deadlines for tax and custom payments. Meanwhile, health authorities are assuring the public that emergency medical services will be available 24 hours a day during the Lunar New Year holiday. Special designated pharmacies will also be opened around the clock. Public health agencies have strengthened management systems for infectious diseases as millions of Koreans head to their hometowns ahead of the major flu season. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
A new government report shows a record number of Chinese visitors came to Korea last year. In response, Korean firms are adapting their business strategies to capitalize on this surging market. Our Sun Jung-in reports.
Korea welcomed some 11 million international travelers last year, with recent data showing visitors from China accounted more than one-third of that tally. According to Korea's Ministry of Justice, the number of Chinese nationals who visited Korea in 2013 reached a record high of 3.9 million. That's a dramatic jump of nearly 44% in annual visitors compared to a year earlier. The ministry attributed the sharp increase in part to streamlined procedures in issuing visas, as well as visa-free entry programs for Chinese passengers on cruise ships and airport transfers. It's a trend that has been gaining significant momentum over the last decade. Visitor numbers from China in 2004 barely scratched 500,000, but that figure has grown more than 8 times higher since the end of last year and is forecast to surpass 4 million by next year. Meanwhile, the weaker yen has hurt the number of Japanese visitors to Korea, one of the country's main sources of tourism income. Korea suffered more than a 22% decline in travelers from Japan in 2013 on year, with that number expected to continue falling. The changing landscape of Korea's tourism industry is catching the eye of local businesses here. Restaurants in the Myeongdong shopping district, a popular spot for international tourists, have begun adjusting their menus to cater to more Chinese customers. Japanese favorites such as stews and raw beef cuisines have now been replaced with more grilled meat dishes. The wave of new Chinese visitors is also being attributed to the popularity of Korean-made products. Among the most popular items that people take back to China include Korean cosmetics, ginseng supplements, and rice cookers. Experts say more local firms across various industries will be switching gears to catch this rising momentum of Chinese tourists to Korea. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the friendly between South Korea and Costa Rica. With the match taking place in Los Angeles, the Taeguk Warriors look to start off the new year with a bang. And they didn't take long to score as Kim Shi-nook in the 9th minute of the match. He's going to send one past the goalkeeper here as Korea takes an early 1-0 lead. Stays that way going into the second half of the match when Christopher Manises is sent off with a red and Costa Rica is down a man. But that's not all. Another red, this time Mauricio Castillo in the 84th minute, and Korea will take advantage of this and take this match 1-0. And moving on with the city of Ulsan trying to earn their rights to the NC Dinos, another city has stepped up as Pohang joins the race. And according to the mayor of Pohang, Mayor Park Seung-ho stated that although nothing is set on stone, the city of Pohang will try to host the NC Dinos as well. And with the Pohang Stadium being used for some of the Samsung Lions home games, it hopes to give home to the NC Dinos. Meanwhile, the city of Changwon has yet to provide a stadium as promised. And moving on to some Sunday's KBL action, the Incheon Itilan Elephants all over Busan KT Sonic Boom 96-69, with KCC cruising past Samsung 84-78. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the highlights between the Seoul SK Knights and the Changwon LG Sakers. Now, first quarter of the game, SK spreading the ball around well as they take an 18-13 lead before LG rallies in the second quarter, thanks to Moon Tae-jong and Chris Massey, as they go into halftime with a 36-32 lead. When the third quarter, SK rallies back thanks to Courtney Sims leading the way for the Knights as they go into fourth quarter with a 1-point lead. But back down by 1 point with 4.4 seconds left, Aaron Haynes with 2 clutch free throws. And that's the difference as SK hangs on to take this game 73-72. And moving on to some V-League action, Daejeon KGC cruises past GS Caltex 3-1 in the Women's League as Samsung Hwaje Bluefangs took on Urikarn over on the men's side. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now, first set, the Bluefangs a bit shaky, but cruises through the rest of the way as they easily take the first set 25-12. But Urikarn quickly bounces back in the second set thanks to Cheong-suk putting up 9 points in the second set as they even it up with 25-19 set win. Bluefangs head coach Chungcheong seen enough as he puts in 3 other players to change up the game, and it works. The Bluefangs bounce back to take the next 2 sets 25-18 and 25-18, with Leo Martinez putting up 39 points as the Samsung Hwaje Bluefangs take this match 3-1. And now finishing things off with the men's Australian Open finals between world number 1 Rafael Nadal and Stan Wawrinka. Nadal the clear favorite in this match, but a back injury sets him back as Wawrinka takes advantage of the injury. The 28-year-old Wawrinka would take the first 2 sets 6-3, 6-2 before Nadal manages to take the third set 6-3. But his back injury too much for the Spaniard as Wawrinka takes the fourth set 6-3 to claim his first Grand Slam title and becoming the first player in 21 years to beat number 1 and number 2 ranked players en route to the Grand Slam title. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and it looks like the last week of January will kick off pretty nice, but morning low will be kind of chilly at -5 degrees Celsius here in Seoul and surrounding areas, so please dress in layers before heading out this morning. But daily highs will rise rapidly and reach well above the seasonal norms, and the level of fine dust particles should be normal, and we do expect to have mostly sunny skies in the entire nation today, so it will be a good idea to take an advantage of nice winter weather conditions this afternoon. And the weather outlook for this week is looking pretty nice. We'll have mild Lunar New Year holidays as well, with afternoon highs hovering above 5 degrees Celsius here in the capital area, and it should be milder down south. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The morning low in Seoul is at -5 and will get up to 5 in the afternoon. Daegu and Gwangju should wake up to low of -3 and -5 and see a high of 10 and 11 respectively, while Busan should top out at 11 under lots of sunshine. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju will climb up to 12 in the afternoon. Daejeon will get up to 8, while the top temperature on Kumgangsan Mountain will be at -4. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. Enjoy your morning commute and hope you have a wonderful day.
And that does it for this Monday edition of Daybreak. Thank you for watching.